Hey guys, this will be video 3 for the how to restore a 7-in-1 Les Paul Goldtop Deluxe, and it's still a Goldtop. And I did a little bit of work on the guitar since the last video, but the primary thing I'm going to cover in this video is the studs. I got those chased, and I got the fretboard off, and I'm going to talk about how to make certain that you protect your fretboard once you get it removed, and then how you do the best you can to salvage the lower. But it was pretty rough, and the original brake was still there. So apparently the repair work was done outside, or maybe it got bumped again and it came loose again, but I don't see any tracing of any glue residue around that area. So there's a possibility it was always still kind of fractured up in there. But what I want to cover in this video is just the continuation from the last one, where I was talking about how I really want to move this pickup, and there's no sense in removing the harness. And for the record, I want to set this straight. Chip did offer to me to remove the harness and remove this pickup, so before he shipped it to me, and I encouraged him, no, just leave it intact, because that way that will allow me to do some testing and whatnot when I get the guitar back together. So, in the last video, I made it sound like, oh, now I got to remove the pickup and whatnot. So I want to, no apologies or anything. It's just, it sounded like I was, not complaining, but just it was one more thing I had to do. That wasn't the issue at all. So Chip had offered to do that stuff. And so anyway, so there you have it. But before I desolder this pickup, which I had talked about in the past, and in the second video, I made the statement, these are probably not original. I'm pretty sure I'm probably mistaken, because I tripped up on another 70, I think it's a 72 that is for sale, and the guy's parting it out. And these capacitors were basically identical to what was in that guitar. So these very well likely could be the original capacitors. And I don't know, that potentiometer's pretty rough looking. I see a green wire right there, probably where it had a fork inductor at one time. So there's been a lot of additional wiring on this. So I say that to say this: since these two potentiometers are not original, and this one is, these two are showing signs of having a work in the past, I don't have a problem, desoldering this pickup. But Chip did offer to remove all that stuff. But nonetheless, what I'm going to do, I've got the soldering gun heating up right now, and I'm going to try to, with caution, remove that without doing any damage. But this ground wire right here is very likely original, but I don't see it continuing from this potentiometer here going in any particular direction. So let me just pull the trigger on that, get that desoldered, and then we'll remove this pickup, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we are going to proceed with cleaning up these cavities, these pickup cavities, and yet maintaining the historical guitar. So before I do that, though, I'll talk about this briefly, because I'll just go ahead and get them out. I did run the tap through that, and it was kind of funny. I mentioned, I always start with stage 1, go to stage 2, and go to stage 3. It was weird. I was having a little bit of difficulty getting the stage 1 to thread up, so I just took the stage 3, and you can see how well it's removing right now. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, you'll have to go to video 2. And what I do is I always take a black marker, Sharpie, and I Sharpie the bottom of that one. That way I know that at least if I'm putting them back together, I'm putting them back together in their original location. But what I did, I just went ahead and went straight to the finish line with the finish tap. And I had a little bit of difficulty getting it started, but I'll just go ahead and show you how I got it started. I didn't put the tool on it, so I just kind of shook it a little bit like that, as I felt it kind of jumping, and I could feel it wanting to jump and thread, and I just kept, shaking it a little bit, and it kept jumping and jumping and jumping, and then finally, after about a minute or two, it was probably down about 3 or 4 threads. And then just by hand, I just sat there, no oil or any of that type of crap. I don't want to get any contaminants in the body. And I just started working it back and forth like that right there. And then eventually I was able to just work it all the way to the bottom. and just going a little bit back and forth, and then taking compressed air and blowing out any rust or contaminants. So you can see now she threads down to the bottom, and as soon as you hit the bottom, you want to stop, because I don't like using the tool. You run the risk there at the bottom, that tool wanting to continue to cut a little bit, and you run the risk of screwing up your threads. So she's I think they call that chasing the threads. So she's chased, and I say that to say this. I would probably just recommend leaving these in the body, Chip, even though I know you've got the Tone Pros. The reason I say that is because I checked the ground on this potential, on this, I don't know why I was going to say potentiometer, I was thinking about grounding, but I checked the ground on that actual anchor right there, and you have an incredible ground connection from the ground wire. So if you're okay with that, I say we leave these historically accurate original ones in, and they are slightly below the body a little bit. All the more reason to just leave them in, because that was what they were doing in 71. But if you want them removed, let me know, man. I'll heat them up, and I'll pull them out. But since they are SAE, the Tone Pros, if you want to go with the new Tone Pros studs, then obviously they should thread right up. So check the bottom. That one is clear. So it goes on the treble side with ease. Okay, so if you did want to bottom out, like that right there with this configuration, or you might want to leave those in place. I mean, if it were my guitar, I probably would just leave them in if they are original. But nonetheless, I'll be setting it up with the new Tone Pro stuff. Okay, so with that said, I don't see the need in proving that ground wire works, that because the cool thing about this Chip's expertise, he knows all that stuff works or does not work. The only thing that was spooking me a little bit, I was getting a real weird reading on this pickup, and as I mentioned, I didn't want to spend much time testing it or anything, but what was going on is with the volume turned all the way up, when I would either plug in and do the testing, either here or on the back of the pickup, I was just barely getting a reading. But then when I turned the volume knob all the way down, when it got right to the bottom, all of a sudden the needle would just go wham, and it would slam out and peak. And I don't know what that means, because I'd mentioned I'm not really savvy when it comes to tech stuff like that. But I know Chip probably knows what that is. So I say that to say this: I don't think there's anything that I can do damage as far as just desoldering those joints and removing this pickup. And also, what was really strange, that's when it was in the bridge position. When it was in the neutral, in the both position, and you know how you touch the ground wire here and then the lead wire right here, the same thing, the meter went wham, it slammed. And the first thing I thought, that's a ground issue. There's some sort of ground jump, it's jumping. And then when I went into the neck position, which there's not even a neck pickup in there, ground wire here, hit the top, wham, the needle slapped out again. So there's some sort of weirdness going on with the harness, which obviously Chip had already mentioned. Hey, just let me know if you want that harness removed for you to do the work. I'll remove it, but I'm just wanting to let you guys know kind of how, when you're working these guitars, make sure you kind of check those things first. So at a minimum, you know what you're working with. So let me get some of this stuff off the table. And let me get a drink of water. I'll be right back. Try to get this on the camera if I can, but not at the expense of burning a spot into the guitar. All right. should allow it to come apart. It's probably the ground wire is probably going to come off with it, but shouldn't be that big of a deal. I don't have a moist cloth here, but a lot of times what I'll do is I'll tin the tip of my solder gun just so that when it makes contact with the solder down there, it'll make a real fast connection. It'll make a real fast jump. It's almost like kind of tinning your, see how I tin the tip there, and then that hot melted solder that was there, it acted like a really quick, desoldering means. And did, oh, this is really cool. Well, let me stop talking here for a second. 1 second. Okay, I think what I'm going to do here, I'm just going to snip this wire because I don't want to run the risk of heat traveling into that capacitor. Okay, so there you have it. And I think there's a possibility what might have happened. It looks like whoever did the soldering on this, I can almost, yeah, it looks like it got pretty damn hot. There's a strong possibility that the ground just got burned into the pushback wire, and there's probably just a ground issue right there. It's grounding out. So, because the fact that the pickup is actually showing some signs of movement, that's a very good indicator that the pickup is probably okay. It just needs to be probably snipped right here, and then just discard all that cowboy. We'll call that liquored up cowboy solder work. That's some pretty hot work right there. Okay. Okay, so I want to make sure we're not hanging on anything. And I always keep a little magnet when I'm disassembling a guitar. Keep a little magnet in there, just throw the screws in there, and then they always grab hold of that. Keeps you from losing things, because sometimes I'll come in here with compressed air and I'll blow off the table, and I wouldn't want compressed air, blowing anything out of that. So let's see if she'll. I don't feel it catching on anything. If you feel it catching, stop. Don't pull anything. Flip it over. Find out what it's hanging on, and pull it out. So there you have it. And this is it says Gibson USA on it, and it says 15K on there. So I don't know what that is, but it doesn't look like it's ever been messed with. Right here, that all looks pretty original. So probably a fairly valuable pickup, and that probably would be the original pickup ring. But I do know that Chip is going to be going with a different set of pickups that are covered. So Chip, let me know what you want to do with that pickup. If you're interested in selling it, I might be interested in buying it. But if you've got a buyer for it, just go from there. Okay, so what should we talk about now that we got her opened up a little bit? Let me just get behind the camera, do a flyby. Should be some really good images right there. Okay, so what we're going to be doing as far as finishing this guitar, and Chip and I had a really good conversation a few days ago, and we got to just really cover the guitar from the headstock down, and the short is we're going to be going with the smaller 59 headstock profile, 17-degree pitch on the neck, the headstock. This is for the SG, the 69 SG that I'm restoring. So what we're going to be doing, see, this is well, let me not start talking about this one, but basically we're going to be going with a 17-degree pitch, a 59 headstock profile. That's the smaller one. However, we're going to be going with my design that's about 1/8 of an inch wider down here, and allowing each E location tuner to open up 1/16 of an inch. Therefore, that will guarantee that it's a real clean, smooth string path off the nut to the tuner on both E's. There won't be any of this kicking in issue. And then, and also, yeah, we're going to be going with the flamed Honduran mahogany neck. So, and I haven't cut that out yet because I've got another job. I'm going to be doing, starting a video tomorrow for a vintage guitar, and that client wants the flamed Honduran mahogany neck as well. So, you two Les Paul cats will be getting the 200 mahogany lowers. So that's going to be really exciting. So I'll be roughing both of those out at the same time. And then, obviously, this job is going back with the original fretboard. If you're watching the series, you already know that. So, and I don't want to start talking about that yet, but that's very important as to what you do once you remove your fretboard very quickly, because this thing is heated up beyond recognition, and you got to make certain that you get it very stable as quickly as possible. So, doing a quick flyby here, I don't really think there's anything to talk about, but what's really cool now that I'm beginning to see this, if that's in the camera, I'll hold it like that right there. You can see where that ground wire stayed intact, and that very well could be the original ground from Gibson, because this potentiometer is original, most likely, and so is that one right there. Won't start talking about that stuff, but I'm fascinated by the whole vintage wiring and stuff, and I've actually learned how to do the actual authentic 50s wiring now, and I've been doing a treble bleed, half watt treble bleed networks on both volume potentiometers now, and it turns the potentiometer into more of like a linear potentiometer, and rather than well, I better stop talking about that because I don't want to get off track. But it just, you know how typically you reach down and start turning the volume off, and it shuts down fairly quickly. When you do the half watt resistor treble bleed network on each volume potentiometer, it acts more in a linear fashion, and as you're rolling the volume down, it just rolls down slower, and you roll all the way down to like 3, 4, and still hear the guitar really well. And then all of a sudden at about 2, it starts shutting down fairly quickly. So I love doing the half watt treble bleed. But Chip was a guitar tech to a pro guitar player that we all know. I won't mention any names or anything, but Chip knows all about that type of stuff, so he doesn't need me telling me how to wire his guitar. So anyway, all right, let me check the time. 19 minutes almost. And I definitely want to spend some time talking about preparing to build a neck. So probably what I'll do is I'll spend just a little bit of time talking about what I had presented in the last video as far as getting ready to machine this work right here, and absolutely 100% guarantee yourself that there's no way you're going to F anything up. So one thing that you want to plan for, in case I forget, you can really use these studs to your advantage, or you could remove these studs and put some like longer studs in, and then you could run 2 thumb adjustment nuts down, and then you could fasten the template to that, and that would guarantee that there's no way your template could jump. Because see, you can't come in with a guitar like this and tape blocking to this, like with double-sided tape or anything like that, because you'll end up destroying the finish. So everything about this remachine job is very likely going to be done on my drill press with running a fluted bit at about 4,500 RPMs, and the drill press, the overhead bit will be remaining, motion. I mean, it'll be fixed in one position, and then I'll literally be moving the body according to the type fluted bit I use. You have a up a cut and a down cut. Spiral bits is what they are. So I won't start talking about that stuff, but it's very likely that what's going to happen is I'm not going to have a router on top of this guitar, routing blindly. That would be a nightmarish. That'd be a suicide mission. But you can do it. But a lot of times what I do is I've got these little templates here. See, I couldn't do it with this guitar, but what I would do is like temporarily glue them like with double-sided tape. And then I would go over to my drill press and I would use that little piece right there and just do my body movement. Because when you're doing machine work, you're either moving the tool or you're moving the board or the boards by which that you're doing the work on. And it's very rare to do that type work where you're moving the body. Usually the bodies are clamped in position and everything's really, really secure. But I don't care how safe you are. If you sneeze or if you look the wrong way, you don't want your router, to make contact or bump this thing or something like that. I'm being a little melodramatic there, and the reason that one is so thin is in the event you're doing work up here and the fretboard is in place, you can double side tape that little jig in that location right there and then do your machine work. And you could use a little trim router if you wanted to, but if you saw the bit that I use, it's pretty brutal and it's about that long and it looks like a shark tooth, double shark tooth. It's really, really aggressive. So, you can use something like that. In other words, like if the guitar is a finished guitar and it has the neck in or something like that and you're relocating the pickup. So there's ways to do that stuff. I need to stop talking about that because I'm getting off track. But by having this template here, I'm able to go to those stud locations and at a minimum start assessing what is in front of us. And this is really cool because if you let's geek out a little bit here with a bamboo skewer. So you start seeing things like this where the 59 location for the tailpiece appears to be identical because that bamboo skewer is going directly through the center of that location. And I'm going to have to keep moving it because I don't know what the light is doing. I don't want to. So we know that's in the original 59 location. It looks like the potentiometers might be a little bit different, but maybe not. Who knows? It's hard to tell. But for certain, seeing as how the studs for the bridge are coming through that template, and you can see our pickup locations. This is what I had mentioned in the last video. I will only be using this template in my hand as a general guide to determine what I should or should not do with this body. I'm not just going to blindly come up here and start routing out this body per these templates because I can already tell you I would lose the guitar because this one right here shows that if I were to just blindly use this template here, I would be taking off probably close to a solid 3/16 of an inch. That's too much. This guitar doesn't need that. And this back here, the way this is set up, see, we definitely don't want to be touching any of this original location right here because that's where the P90 cover would have been. So I say we need to leave that in place. And it's about 1/8 of an inch behind where the 59 location would be. Then again, this is Chip's call to do this however he wants to do because I'm about to start talking about what's going to happen to the tone. The tones are going to be a little bit different because when they come in here and do the chisel work on the back. Uh, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I say probably minimum. Let me slow down. Let me think for a second, because this is the first time I've seen this. Okay, the chisel work that they did right here is not quite an eighth of an inch further in that direction. So what does that mean? The bridge pickup for 50s would be right here, but for this particular guitar, we would be moving back about a 16th of an inch. That's well, no, actually, if we follow Chip, and I'm talking to Chip here, if we follow this original wall right here and leave that intact, then the whole location for your pickup is going to be about 1/8 of an inch closer to the bridge. It's going to be much brighter. But you're a guitar tech as well, so I just want you to be aware of these things. But I don't have a problem coming in here after I rebuild all four corners with the maple. It would mostly be maple over Honduran mahogany, because I misspoke and said, yeah, I'd be coming in and putting mahogany in here. There would be mahogany on the bottom, probably about a quarter of an inch tall, and then the top little corners would be maple, and then not touch any of the original stuff. But then once you did your machine work, you would have a real beautiful, clean fitment in there. Machine work in there. And then once you fit your pickup, then you got plenty of room for it to, I'm exaggerating, but for it to move around so that you can adjust the height. But if you want these pickups locations as close to the original 59 as possible right here, I might need to machine off a little bit right here. But whatever I took off here would only be based on making certain that I didn't do something stupid, like that right there. It would definitely be based on, okay, well, if we know that it probably should have been right here, if it's my guitar, I'm thinking along the lines of, okay, I don't have a problem if the very edge of that pickup ring is just barely kissing that edge right there. That doesn't bother me as a guitar builder and as a player and for my own guitars. But if I'm doing that for a client, I want them to know, hey, are you cool if we really would if we would prefer to relocate this pickup to closer to the original position where it would have been in 59. How do you feel about me possibly routing off a little bit of this up here? But as long as we don't go only what's necessary, only what's necessary, but making certain that this pickup ring back here, and I'm showing a neck pickup ring because the tall ring, it's actually mounted to this pickup. But I know Chip knows exactly what I'm talking about here, but I'm kind of being rudimentary for you guys out there that are watching this for entertainment, or either you got a router out and you're getting ready to relocate the pickup in your guitar. See, the side to side is not an issue, because it's just not. This screw location that is right here is if it changes at all, it's only going to change in this direction, going that way. Same thing with this one right here in that direction. So I say that to say this. Obviously, Chip, before I pulled the trigger on any of this stuff, I would be communicating with you those things, and I know you've already clarified to me. Well, I trust your judgment and don't take this wrong, but just please be careful if you do this. And I totally respect that, and I did not take any offense to that at all. But up here, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the pickup ring, see, the end of the fretboard goes, that should be in the camera really well. I know the end of the fretboard goes right to that very edge right there. So I do know that once the humbucker goes up here, it's going to be floating. and I can see some areas right here. There's like a screw, some sort of screw hole right here, and that screw hole would not show. That screw hole would not show, but there's a little hole right here, and I know Chip's like me. We're not splitting hairs, but or I'm kind of splitting hairs a little bit, but once this pickup ring goes up to the end of the fretboard, there's going to be a little bit of funky weirdness with the top right there. And I don't have a problem doing my machine work and making certain that I don't come in here and F up any of this original up here. But then since Chip and I talked about how he knows exactly how he wants to correct that separation between the three-piece top right there, then if he's obviously savvy enough to do that, he's definitely savvy enough to do any of his touch-up work up here. But I'm not talking about you know screwing up this back here and you're having to figure out how to patch all that. And I know Chip, he knows that I'm not going to pull the trigger on the router or the drill press routing station until I know that once this pickup ring goes down, and I'll actually mount one uh, so that when you do your pickups, all you'll be doing is just installing them in that original location. Okay, so a lot of I'm flying, I'm shooting from the hip here because I wanted to do this disassembly on camera rather than do it prior to the filming. But had I've done this off camera and then just come on, I could have explained this in about 30 seconds. Uh, So anyway, I hope that makes sense. We'll guarantee that we'll be working from that location right there. And there's really no way I could screw any of this up back here because all I need to take off of this back is about a 1/16 of an inch. But I don't want to take that 1/16 of an inch off of this until I've got the really beautiful little mahogany corners. Excuse me, I keep saying mahogany, maple corners put in here so that once I do this machine work, you've got the real beautiful humbucker route. I know you know what I'm talking about there. The same thing, get this little dowels out of these corners here as well, and the same thing. But I hope that makes sense. It looks, from what I could tell from this pickup, from this template right here, it looks like the pickup really needs to move forward a little bit, but right up to the point to where, obviously, if that's where it needed to be, I would say, well, that's not going to work, but it's not. I think probably after I do the engineering, it's probably going to be right at the threshold. But once there's a bridge there, even if there was just a bit of a ghost gapping going on, um, well, let me back up. If it needed to move that way, I would machine that clean, and then I would be epoxy gluing in a small, super, super thin maple fillet, that would then give that pickup something to rest on. Even if you don't see the material, and I know, I'm sure Chip understands what I'm talking about, at least it would give something for the pickup ring to bend to. Okay. So, and I'm like Chip, as Chip made the statement, well, if that was going to be done, this is definitely the time to do it. And not only, it just is. And there's no sense talking about that because once the neck is off and all this stuff is out of the way, that doesn't mean that it's a job you don't pay particular attention to because, the only way I would pull the trigger on this is if I am 100% certain there's no way I'm going to screw this up. There's no way there's going to be a mistake. And, and if you're in doubt, then that's when you need to pause, go cut the grass, collect yourself, and think through your job, of what could go wrong, what could really go wrong. And once you've processed through all those things, it's usually at that point you're just making a judgment call as to what you're going to do. So sorry about being so long-winded there, but this is a really important job, and I think it's important to do this disassembly work on camera and then just kind of process through it as it's in front of us. So let me look at that one more time just for my own selfish records because I didn't get to continue talking about how cool it is to have these templates. Let's see if this is in the same location. That's interesting. This body is about a 1/16 of an inch longer, so could be a different scale. The 59 might have been a 24 9/16 inch scale. I don't remember. I know it was at a minimum. I mean, I know at a maximum it was 24.625. That location looks fairly close. But that was interesting how the relationship between these 2 points here and here are the same. So no variation in the spacing right there. Okay. So let me pause, get a drink of water, and think about how I want to transition into talking about fretboards next and how to move forward building your new neck for your vintage guitar. Okay, I took about 10, 15 minutes and just left it on pause and kind of studied this for a moment, and I made a really interesting discovery. This is really cool. And the short about what took place here was obviously they just took off material from this side in order to have the humbucker up against the fretboard. That was a cool move. That was kind of a given. They had no choice but to take material off right there. The mistake that kind of got made when they moved material in this location from the original P90 route, it would have been better if they had removed material from that side of the original location, but they took it from the back side. Oh, sorry, hold on one second. Sorry about that. But so they took material from the backside, but we're only talking, roughly an eighth of an inch worst case scenario here. So it's really not that bad. They're fairly close to the location that they should be in. But the discovery I just made, which was really interesting, is the P90. We'll take just a second. The P90 locations in the 1950s guitar that P90 location is much further in that direction. The P90 location in the 50s, this would be like a 1955 location. It's a good 3/8 of an inch further back in that direction. So you see that distance right there. So with that guitar, it's on the opposite side. But with the 50s location, if you had a 50s profile and you're going to route it for either humbuckers or P90s, well, then these two templates would get you there. So that's really interesting. And what does that do to the tone of a 50s guitar with a P90? It would be a much brighter bridge position, whereas the early 70s P90s guitars, it would appear as though they moved the P90 a good 3/8 of an inch in that direction, probably to get a warmer tone. Who knows? Or maybe just to do it to make certain that there wasn't any copycatting, but I don't think they really cared about that type of stuff back in the 70s of people doing, what they call them, conversions or any of that type of stuff. So there you have it. So let's talk about something different. Okay, talk about necks a little bit, and then we check the time. 38 minutes. It feels like it's a really, really long video only because it's been a really long day and I just paused for like 15 minutes. So I'll just have to focus on making certain that I do as good of a job as I can talking about the whole project and moving in the direction of neck construction. Tell you what, just to be safe, let's just leave her low to the ground or low to the table. Okay, with this guitar, we're going to be going with the Honduran mahogany, flamed billet. So it's going to be pretty cool. And what's going to take place if you were getting ready to build a replacement neck for a guitar like this, you got one of two options basically. You could do a multi-piece neck where you have a board, basically like a large wide board, and then you just cut out each template per a particular design. 1950s Les Paul, even a Gretsch Jet Penguin, they're the same virtually. But with the Gibson, it's a 17-degree headstock, 24.562 scale, or 625. So, and then there's your 17-degree pitch headstock, because Chip did elect to go that route. So if that's the case, then you need to build your neck templates on paper first, and then lay them on your board and start assessing, can you even get the three leaves out of one board according to how wide it is. And I'm not going to spend any time talking about that, because this client elected to go with a one-piece neck, machined out of the Honduran mahogany. But that's how you would lay it out if you were doing a multi-piece neck. And this neck right here, this is a multi-piece neck, and you can see it's really beautiful after it's said and done. So if you were to go that route, see, these are the ears that you glue on once you start widening your headstock. Those are called the ears. Okay, light as a feather. I think that's like a 0.8 pounds. It's really feather light. But I want you to take note of something here briefly, even though we're not going to build this guitar neck out of a three-piece neck. See the 1C, the 3C, and then the 5C on this one right here. So regardless of where these are in the shop, if I pick them up, I know that they were oriented in this fashion right here. So when I get ready to build this neck, I'm either going to be taking the 1 to the outside, the 3C in the middle, and the 5C on the base side. Therefore, whatever's going on with the annular ring, it'll be repeated times 3, because it's very unlikely that it's perfectly quarter or perfectly plain. It's typically always going to be some sort of rift sewn. So whatever rift might be going on in this one, since you took them out of virtually the same location, once you start stacking them and you machine into that heel, it should start appearing as though it's a one-piece neck, because everything's going in the same direction. Don't ever come in and start trying to change the direction and the orientation thinking you're going to do something good for the strength. All you're going to do is create a visual eyesore, because the chatoyancy is going to scream at you. When you turn this neck, these two will be strawberry blonde, this one will be red, and then you'll flip it, and then all of a sudden this one will be strawberry blonde, and these two will be red, or vice versa. So always try to keep it in line like that. And it's not really the end of the world if you had like 1 3C, 3C, and 5C. It wouldn't really be, you don't have to necessarily put them together like that. You might elect to put 5C over here and 1C on the outside and 3C in the middle, because maybe you had a knot right here or right here, and you knew that once you cut that round on it, that knot would disappear. And I'm going to show you that exact situation. You might see a little bit of figuring right here. There was a very small little knot, and I knew, okay, by the time I machine this down, that little knot's going to disappear. But it's really cool because it left a little bit of figuring right there. So for the most part, and this is one of those where 1C might have gone in the middle, and this might be 3C, and this might be 5C. Okay. And as far as neck construction goes, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the future. And I say the future, the next video for this guitar, because I'm going to be building this neck as a one-piece neck out of one solid piece of Honduran. And with that said, you'll basically just be making the determination, okay, and I landed another vintage Les Paul restoration that is actually sitting over here in the floor. I received it today. So, Jerome, I appreciate that, man. And I sent you the pictures of receiving the guitar, and it was a safe shipment, and everything looks really good. But since I'll be building two necks for two different guitars, this one's a 71, and this Goldtop over here is a 73. It's going to be pretty cool. They're going to have sister necks, and that's where you'll be making the determination of, okay, well, how do I rough them out, and which one do I want to go to this guitar, which one do I want to go to this guitar? It's irrelevant because they're both beautiful, and this is very close to quarter sewn, but it's about, I would say it would be considered rift sewn. But regardless, whatever goes on one is going to be virtually identical on the other. And this board is flamed here, flamed here, flamed here, and flamed. Let me see if I can move around. If you see the flame. So, however you use this board, it's going to be loaded full of flame. And a lot of times it's really disheartening because you'll pick up a board and it's really beautiful in one location, and all of a sudden it gets really bland and blasé. But not this one. This is a really nice board. So okay, but then you'll be working with the whole layout of because I had already kind of laid it out, and I thought I had made some pencil marks on. I guess I didn't, probably because I wasn't 100% certain. But regardless, you find the most beautiful parts of the board, and you just yeah, definitely it's definitely this side right here. Well, I have no idea, but basically what you're doing is yeah, sorry, this right here. Because you want to try to work from a real nice fit, especially since you're working from a one-piece neck. I want to go ahead and work from this nice machine side and that side right there. And then that guarantees once I come in with my band, start doing all my bandsaw work, then I'm just relieving this all one-piece neck all at once. It'll look something like that right there. And it'll be all nasty and rough and bandsaw marks and stuff like that. And that's why you want to make certain that you don't try to cut too close to the finished profile, because when you're building a one-piece neck, this is so important. There is a much stronger possibility that when you bandsaw out that one large piece right there down to roughly 3/4 of an inch all the way around and up to about 1 1/8 inch right here, typically what's going to happen that the neck is going to pull down just a little bit. So you need to be prepared to machine off. Well, let me back up. After you do that bandsaw work, you want to let it sit for about a day or two and watch it and make certain that it's not going to twist first off. And then if it had just a little bit of I'm just going to call it movement. If it has a little bit of movement, which is very likely, it's going to have a little bit of movement. You want to let it kind of go where it wants to go, then start addressing the leveling, and leveling this surface first. You want to start working from this surface and that surface, and I should be showing this right here. You're wanting to clean up this surface first, make certain that you've got a really true beautiful plane, and that it's always staying true. And then after you have that, then you're obviously machining that plane right there, and you're not worrying too much at all about what's going on the backside, because all that's going to be getting cut down to the finished profile later on. So kind of read between the lines, and I'm not going to spend any more time talking about that, other than you just really won't know until you rough it out in bandsaw. But make certain you don't try to bandsaw out the finished profile. That's a dangerous move, and it's very, very unlikely that it will work to your advantage. But I want to show you something here about what you can expect from Honduran mahogany. So if you can expect it to be, what I'm doting about here is how little movement there. This little board right here, it did move in that direction just a little bit. How much did it move? Nothing measurable, because just by touching it, it comes back together. So if these little pieces will stay that true and that accurate, no movement from side to side at all. They're just perfect. Whether you put that one in the middle or the other one in the middle, you can see why I love working with the Honduran mahogany. It's always very true and very stable. But when you're working with figured wood, it's more dense and it has a more tendency to move. I'm just going to call it movement. It's not warpage, it's not twisting, it's not cupping. It's just a little bit of movement that you've got to machine down within that large billet that you roughed out to the finished profile that you're getting ready to machine and turn into that right there. Okay, and it's really cool when you go from this S4S section right there to the machine work. It does have a tendency to want to pull just a little bit more, but not enough that you need to put it back on a machine and try to level this. At that point, it's as simple as coming in with some aluminum oxide 120, the 3M. This is my favorite. You can get it at any of your big box. And with your Stuart McDonald template, if you're holding this neck in your hand and there's just ever so slight amount of movement and you're assessing it and you're thinking about it and you're asking yourself, okay, well maybe it pulled just a little, then you might take your a plate right here and just hit it just a little bit down here to take off some of that distance, or you can just use your truss rod and maybe put a little bit of forward. Let's say it pulled back, then you would take your truss rod. See, the cool thing about my truss rod right now, this is a really good video. This is 100% neutral. There's no movement on that. There's no tension on that truss rod right now. And I have a master grade neck that was machined out a week ago, a week and a half ago, has not moved. Not at all. It's freezing cold in my shop, by the way. I always keep it real cold. But this neck does not need any movement at all. But if it did pull just a little bit, what I would do is put just a little bit of forward tension on it and leave it there for a day or two, kind of see what happens. And you might be surprised to find that all it needed was just a little bit of an encouragement. And then once you get ready to glue your fretboard down, you might be surprised by then you might be able to loosen that tension off. So don't go too gung ho with this whole attempt to make it perfectly level right here, because it might just be all you need to do is just put just a little bit of a kiss on the truss rod and it'll flatten it out perfectly. But with this one right here, 100% neutral, 100% flat, perfectly true neck. I can lay this on a flat surface. I can measure the distance from the surface right here to any point on this side and any point on this side, and they're identical. What if they're not identical? It's not that big of a deal. So don't read between the lines. I'm not saying do shoddy guitar work, but if this headstock did have just a little bit of movement in it, not twist, but I'm just going to say a little bit of movement in a particular direction, or maybe when you were sanding it, machining it, you effed it up, and you might have sanded a little bit of a plane in it. Don't discard the neck. It's fine. It'll be okay. The most important thing is that it's sitting nice and true on the flat surface, and that there's no twist back here. You can't have any twist at all. But with the Honduran mahogany, if you did a really good job as you were doing all your build work, then you're able to come out here and do this assessment right here, and you simply just put it on your table saw and check and see if it's 2 1/4 there, 2 1/4 there. And usually what I'm doing when I do that, I'm using a clear, and I'm just looking at tick marks. I don't even care what the dimension is. I'm just asking myself if it's the same. And this one is 2 3/16. And what do you know? 2 3/16. So perfectly true neck. Okay. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that's Honduran mahogany. And any guitar that I've ever built out of Honduran mahogany, it's always been as true as that. And if they're that true after they've been roughed out and laying over on a side table for a week and they haven't moved, well, what do you think is going to happen once you glue them together? They're going to be even more likely to stay perfectly true and straight. But if you were to rough this out and all of a sudden one just went crazy and started going somewhere, then slow down and back up and punt and determine whether you might even want to consider using these two. You might want to discard all three. At a minimum, you want to discard that one. Okay, but say this: I've never had to do that with Honduran mahogany. Never, not once. Okay. 54 minutes of some intense conversation. I can't really think of what else to talk about. I know exactly what I need to talk about. Let me pause, clean the table off, and then we're going to talk about what to expect when you start removing a fretboard and how to keep it under control. Okay, you should be able to cover rest of the neck work before the video ends. And in case I forget, Chip, well, now I won't because I set it on the table. If you want, I can go ahead and mail this back to you so that if you have a buyer for it or someone that you might want to, or another guitar you want to put it in, because before I fired the video back up, I did test it again, and there was a real weak reading from it. But I really believe it's just I think there's a ground issue right there. I think it's burned into, and it might not even be making contact. It might just almost be making contact. But nonetheless, if you want me to send this back to you, I can mail it immediately. And let me try to give you a measurement on the lead length here. Well, I tell you what, I'll shoot you a text, but it's a fairly long lead, so might be a valuable pickup once it's cleaned up. So you're getting ready to remove a fretboard, and let me just talk about how this process went briefly, but enough that you'll understand what I'm talking about. If you saw the last video, I talked about how I just took a butane torch, and I originally was going to remove it with this blade right here, which would have been fine, but this one is absolutely considerably thinner, only because I've had it for so long. And I just ended up using this one right here for the most of, well, actually every bit of it. I used this up to about this point right here, and then I was getting a little bit spooked because I was beginning to see the fretboard do that humpback, and it's always scary when you're removing a fretboard. You want to keep a real good firm grip on it as you're removing it. You can't just let this thing start curling up, because you're heating these blades up so hot in order to burn through that resorcinol glue that it's pretty damn hot. It's so hot that I had to put a leather glove on with the fingers in it, because as I was touching it right here, I could just feel the heat coming through and just basically burning myself. So you have to really keep a good grip on it in order to not lose control of the fretboard. And as you can see, I did just that. It's perfectly straight, perfectly true. Won't have any issues once we're transferring it over to the new neck lower. But as soon as it came off the board, the first thing I did, because it was super hot, I just want to know the truth, I actually had a 2-foot level on this side and a larger board on the back side, and I had it clamped like that, just gingerly, nothing major. But what I want to address right here, I was doing absolutely everything I could to just completely save this lower as to the best I could, because it's potentially a usable lower, but I didn't want to run the risk of losing the fretboard trying to salvage something that probably well, the fretboard is far more valuable for our finished project because it's in such unbelievably exceptional condition. I would much rather lose this lower 100% in order to save this. But what I ran into when I got up to this point right here, I didn't realize it, but the putty knife was beginning to travel up under that fracture, and I noticed it fairly quickly on this side over here. Within just a moment, I noticed that, oh man, it's trying to peel up over here. So I started coming back and trying to go in from the side. But what had happened, since this was already fractured and was already apart from the initial break, when I went in from this side right here, it literally just went back, started going up under it, and I couldn't tell. Obviously the fretboard's up here, and you think, okay, well, this is awesome. It's actually going through, and it was actually going through really easily, but it was still so effing hot that the fretboard, the glue was turning loose up here, even though I wasn't between the actual wood and the fretboard. But all I'm saying is just proceed with caution when you're doing work like this. When you're working in the blind, you might be under the assumption everything's working out really well, but in all actuality, what's happening is you're coming out of the neck over here, and that that sucks. It does really suck, but nonetheless, every bit of this was all repair work anyway, and it's not that it's repair work as much as what caused me to realize, okay, I got to stop worrying about this lower and trying to baby it. This thing is 40 millimeter, basically at the first fret. At a minimum, that needs to be about 42 millimeter at a minimum in order to be a usable lower. And then up here, it jumps back up to 40. Well, it's almost 42, which that's usable. But, and also right here, I want to say, man, I want to say it's like 12. Yeah, it's 13 millimeter. This should be 17 millimeter for your typical lower. So this should be about 17 millimeter for the lower. And then once you put the fretboard on it, it's about 21 to 22 millimeters. So you can see, excuse me, how this lower is basically just machined down to nothing. So I did the best I could with what was in front of me, Chip. But if anything, it's still something that could be rebuilt. But I don't really see the only what the solution would be to remove the truss rod and then maybe do a reverse scarf joint from this location right here and remove every bit of the old repair and then build a new headstock. But that's a hell of a lot of work for something that you might not even be interested in. However, from here down, it's really beautiful. It's a little bangered up right here, but man, this hill is absolutely beautiful. So the last thing I would want to do is throw it away. But so just let me know if you want me to mail this back to you along with the pickup. If you think you might have some sort of use for it, just let me know. I can get those back to you because I'm not going to need this anymore because I already have all these dimensions and I have this profile and I got a pretty neat set of tools. I know how to match all that, and I'm glad I'm looking. Let me check the time. Oh wow, probably going to cut me off in about 3 seconds. Sorry about getting long-winded. But when you're rebuilding a neck, if you have a donor neck, you can put the two together and you can verify that you're hitting everything properly. And I hate I got so long-winded in a lot of the earlier part of the video because I know this is going to cut me off within 10 seconds or 30 seconds. So when you're removing a fretboard, just proceed with caution. And when it is off, get it in a jig and keep it real nice and stable as quickly as you can. So I appreciate you guys dropping in, and I'll see you in the next video if it cuts me off. And the next video will be, have no idea, because I got a lot to talk about this right here with Chip as far as this route work. But for the most part, I definitely will be roughing out the neck and stuff like that. So there's a lot of work to do. All right, thanks guys. I appreciate you dropping in, and I will see you in the next video.